But God is still God, amen.
Amen.
He's still yet on the throne.
Amen.
He never told us that every day will be perfect. But he did tell us he would never leave us or forsake us. So we are in constant prayer for those who are dealing with the loss of Sister Shantae, her family and her friends. God is ever present. And he is yet holding you up, amen, in this time of bereavement.
Yes.
Let us go to Genesis, the 39th chapter. Genesis, 39th chapter, starting at verse number 1.
Amen.
Genesis, the 39th chapter, starting at verse number 1. Genesis, the 39th chapter, starting at verse number 1. And it reads as follows: And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Verse number 3, and his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had put into his hand. Let's drop down to verse number 20 and 21. Verse number 20, and Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Stop right there. I want to speak from the subject text. This too shall pass.
Yes,
Lord,
all right.
amen, amen.
This too
Yes,
shall
amen.
pass. This is a familiar passage that I know we all are aware of.
Amen.
And you also may be familiar with the statement that this too shall pass. Used to be one of Mama Gail's favorite sayings. Whenever we would face adversity and seek her guidance, she would always tell us, this too shall pass.
Amen.
And in that statement speaks volumes, because it reminds us that whatever state that we are currently in, that God is not going to leave us in, but rather it shall pass, because we are only in it for a season.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of the things that we may encounter now. We face afflictions, we face adversities, we face temptations, we face all sorts of obstacles, but they only come to make us stronger. And the reason they come is that we don't lose sight of the fact that there is one who is in control of it all. That while it may seem to come to derail us and to distract us and to harm us, it only comes that we may grow closer to the one who keeps us.
Amen.
As I looked at this text, I was reminded that here we find Joseph, who was thrust into a situation that he was unfamiliar with. He was facing something that he had not yet been prepared for. Joseph, if you remember, was just a young lad. He was his father's beloved son, and his brothers hated him because he had so much favor with his father. And one day they decided to harm him in any kind of way. First they wanted to kill him, but then they didn't want the blood of their brothers upon their hand or over their head. So they decided to sell him into slavery. But one thing we have to be reminded of is the fact that Joseph was not prepared for what he was going into.
Come on.
While he understood that his father loved him and that his father gave him favor, and that everything that he had was at the hand of his father, and he had this dream of what God was going to do in his life and how his brothers and his father would bow to him because God would raise him up to a level. But God never told him what he had to go through to get to the promise that he had in his life.
Yes.
See, sometimes we have to understand and be mindful of the fact that we may know the end result, but there are still some things you got to go through.
That's right.
That God is going to get to or use to get you to your desired destination.
Yes.
Not everything is going to be filled with roses. Not everything is going to be fun and good. There are going to be some heartaches and some pains.
Yes.
And I just have to believe that Joseph got into this situation, and there was nothing that he had ever gone through that would even give him the inclination on how to sustain himself through what he was facing now. But we find out in the first few verses of the text that even though he was thrust into something that he had no knowledge of ever being able to prepare himself for, but the one thing he needed was God. And the Bible says that God was yet still with him.
Yes, yes.
You got to understand that even when you face some adversity, that God is still yet with you. Even when you face some obstacles, that God is still yet with you. Even when you are dealing with some afflictions, that God is still yet with you. Here we discover that in the text, that even though he's in a foreign land, even though he's been separated from his lifestyle, even though he's not familiar with the people, but yet he's familiar with his God. You have to understand that even though you may face some adversity and some pain, the familiarity of your God is what's going to see you through.
Yes. Amen.
He got to a point where he understood what he was facing. He got to a situation that there was no point in him wallowing in his pity. He got to a point where he understood that while he was not with his family, he still had his God. There are some things that God allows us to go through, that sometimes he allows us to go through it, that we may get closer to him. Sometimes that requires us to be separated from the things that we are familiar with. The things that we are so comfortable in, and things, our surroundings that we are used to going to and used to doing things. We have gotten so familiar in our homes that we don't even have to have the lights on to know where we're going. The lights can be out, it can be jet dark in the house, but yet we can navigate ourselves through our house and in and out of our rooms because we are familiar with our landscape. We are familiar with our surroundings. But every now and again, sometimes there is something that causes some disruption in your life that throws you off kilter. And sometimes we get discombobulated, we get confused, but you have to get back into your familiar state of knowing that God is still yet with you. That even though you may not know your surroundings, that you may be confused about this journey, but you should be not confused about your God. You should always have yourself in a position of understanding that God is still yet with you.
Yes.
He finds himself thrust into this atmosphere in this foreign land of Egypt with Potiphar. And God is with him, and God prospers him, and God allows him to get to a place where he is elevating him. We know the story that Potiphar's wife developed a fame for Joseph. And she thought he was a fine specimen of a man. And she began to desire him in ways that did not sit well with Joseph. And when she came for him, he spurned her advances. And because he spurned her advances, she lied on him. And even though she knew that he had not touched her in the way she said he did, she was spurned because how dare he turn his back on her when she is his servant, and how dare he turn his back away from me when he is to do whatever I tell him to do. But when you are in a situation where you depend only on God, you got to learn that the only one you need to listen to and follow the direction of is your God. You don't need to succumb to your new surroundings because you don't know what these folks are trying to do, but you know what your God is trying to do. And you know he has your best interest at heart, that you need to learn how to stay the straight and narrow with God and turn from those wicked ways that the world would have you to go and the path they would have you to go down, and stay right with God, because no matter what the world tries to do to you, God is still yet orchestrating your life.
Amen.
So he spurns her. She gets agitated and creates this lie about he tried to take her and all this mess. And his boss, who saw that the Lord was with him, saw that everything his hand touched prospered.
Yes, amen.
In his feelings, he threw Joseph in jail. But sometimes you need to tell the world, I don't care what you do to me.
Yeah.
My God is still with me.
That's right.
He was with me in your house, and we discover in the verses 20 and 21 that God was yet with him even while he was in prison.
Yes, amen.
But what I love about this text is that sometimes being confined is best because it causes you to focus on what you have been failing at home. Sometimes God has to put you in a predicament that will cause you to reflect on what you have not done. Because he needs you to understand that even in your place of comfort, while I've been keeping you and orchestrating your life, you've grown too comfortable and you haven't been doing what I needed you to do. Sometimes you got to reflect on this stuff that God allows you to go through. And what he's trying to tell you, that I had to disrupt your life in order to wake up what I put on the inside of you. And even though what you're in now is uncomfortable, it too shall pass. It's not going to be there for a long time. It's just there to cause what's on the inside of you to bubble up to the surface, because I needed something to get you on the right path and moving down the direction that I needed you to go. And I needed to disrupt your familiarity with your surroundings. I needed to get you out your comfort zone. So I caused this disruption. I caused this affliction. I caused this pain. I caused this hurt, only that I could get you to an understanding that I need you to walk where I need you to go.
Yes,
Amen, amen.
Thank you, Lord. Yes, yes.
Joseph only knew what his dream promised him. But he didn't know what it was going to take to get the promise.
That's right.
Amen.
Yeah.
He didn't know the pain or the suffering.
Yes.
He didn't know the sacrifice
Yes.
or the hurt. All he knew was what the promise was.
Amen.
But just because he encountered those things didn't mean that the promise was negated.
That's right. That's right.
It just means that there was something necessary for him to go through in order for the promise to be fulfilled.
Amen.
There are some things that are necessary for you to encounter in order for the promise to be fulfilled. There are some things that are necessary for you to undertake in order for you to get the promise. There are some things when you are dealing with birth and something, there's pain in birth.
Come on.
And sometimes you got to push when you don't want to push in order to birth out out what's on the inside of you.
That's right.
There are some things that are necessary for you to go through in order for God to birth out the blessing and the promise that he has promised that you shall receive.
Yes.
You don't have to be free
That's right.
in order to have the freedom in God. You can be bound and still be free. You can be stuck up and confined and still be free.
Yes.
But you have to understand that your freedom is not what man gives you, but your freedom is what God gives you. And what you have to understand, that whatever is trying to confine you, it shall pass.
Amen.
Thank you, Lord.
The Bible is clear that these things that we face shall pass.
Amen.
But we have to learn how to deal with the circumstances that we encounter. Sometimes we face these adversities that we try to figure out what God is trying to do. We look at it from a natural perspective. We look at it from a carnal mindset and not a spiritual undertaking. Because of doing that, what we do is we allow man to dictate how we see our circumstance. See, what man really does one thing when it's trying to exert its power upon something. What it tries to do is it tries to oppress.
Amen.
But see, what God tries to do with his hand is he tries to impress. To oppress means that you are trying to keep something in a state of submission, or a state of being submissive, a state of being in a hardship, trying to convey or trying to impose your will upon it because you wanted to do what you wanted to do. You are trying to oppress the feelings of doing things your way. You are trying to oppress somebody else's mindset upon what you are doing in your own life. But when you look at things from God's perspective, when he is trying to impress, he's trying to make something, he's trying to put a mark on something, he is trying to define something out of nothing. In other words, that's why he said, let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. What you have to really see out of that is that when God sends you through these obstacles, when God allows you to go down these journeys and these paths, what he's really trying to do is impress his will upon you, that you can see that when you go through the adversity of the pain of pressure, that he's causing his design and his divine will to be impressed upon your spirit. And what he wants you to draw from the fact that if you've seen Christ go through the very same thing and come out, that you can do the same thing and come out. You have to understand that every time people try to pull you down, that you can get back up. Every time somebody tries to lie on you, the truth will outlast a lie any day. Every time somebody tries to derail you or distract you, God can put you back on the right path. It doesn't matter how many times they try to take you down. God can always pick you back up.
Amen.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you,
Amen.
Lord.
The Bible in the text illustrates for us this understanding that no matter how low you think you go,
That's right.
God is still there with you.
Yes, he is.
Amen.
Here, Joseph had gotten to a place where even though it wasn't home, I have to believe that he had started to feel more better about his surroundings being in Potiphar's house.
Right.
He would never be as comfortable as he was at being at home.
That's right.
But he had got to an understanding in Potiphar's house that it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
That's right.
That's right.
And he got to a place where now he was starting to feel as though he had some value back in his life. And as soon as he allowed himself to believe that, here comes old Miss Potiphar and constructed this lies that led to him to go now even lower than where he was before. And he gets to the prison where now he's confined within these small places. And this is not a prison that we have nowadays. He may not have been getting 3 hots and a cot. He may have just gotten just a hot and a cot. No matter how many times he was in prison, he was reminded that his freedom was not there. He didn't have time to go out on the yard and run around or lift weights with the other guys. No, he was either confined in his cell or he was out being enslaved by the Egyptians. So it wasn't all rosy, not to say that being in prison is rosy, but if you have ever been in prison and you find yourself that it is not a place where you want to be, just go back a few 100 years, 1,000 years and discover that if it wasn't rosy now, then you know it wasn't rosy then. So you can understand a mindset that if it was hell now, then it sure enough was hell then. So it wasn't a place where he wanted to find himself. But yet the Bible declares that even in prison, the favor of God was with him. Even in confinement that he was in, God was still yet with him. Even when he couldn't come and go as he pleased, God was still yet with him. Even when he had a tag to define him as who he was, God was still yet, even when he thought the promise of God had passed him by, God was still yet. What are you trying to say? What I'm trying to tell you this morning, no matter how much hell tries to overtake your life, this too shall pass. I don't care how many times people try to distract you, derail you, devalue you. God says this too shall pass, because at the end of the story, the Bible declares that even though he was in prison, that God had orchestrated something that would elevate him to be higher than he ever would have ever thought in his life. He may have hit the bottom, but that's not what God left him.
Thank you, Lord.
I don't care how long. You got to be in the place that you think is your bottom.
That's right.
God has a way of bringing you back.
Yes, it does. Amen. Amen.
And not just bringing you back to where you were. Not just bringing you back to your comfort zone.
Thank you, Lord.
Not just bringing you back where you can now just get a nicer wig.
That's right. Say
And
it.
an okay weave.
Say
And some okay clothes.
it.
No, he brings you back to when now you top of the line. Now he says, go and get the $400 weed. Go and get them red bottoms. Go on and get that Mercedes. Go on down there and get that plush apartment, that nice house in that gated community, because you've been down long enough. But I only had you down to let you know that it shall pass. I didn't leave you down for a lifetime, but I'm going to bring you up for my glory, because every time they talk about you, every time they lie on you, every time they try to hold you back, I'm going to get the glory when I raise you up. And I heard him say, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men to me. Your life is not for your benefit, it's for God's benefit. And even though it may feel like you're dealing with all these obstacles, don't worry, it shall pass, and God shall get all the glory out of your life.
Hallelujah. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Yes. Amen. Thank you, Lord.
The song said, trouble don't last
That's
always.
right. Amen. Amen.
Not only does trouble don't last always, but neither does the hurt.
That's right.
Yes.
Amen.
Neither does the pain.
Amen. Amen.
Neither does the affliction.
Yes.
Not even the shame.
Yes.
None of those things last always.
Yeah.
And when you understand they won't last always, then that lets you know that they shall pass.
Amen.
Amen.
And what I love about the statement that the shall is a legal term,
Yes.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
which simply means that it has to happen.
Yes.
That's right.
There is no if, There is no maybes.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
What shall is instructed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say it.
It's without any shadow of a doubt
Yeah.
that what is about to happen is going to happen.
That's right.
You just got to keep holding on long enough
Yeah.
and believe God long enough
Amen.
that He didn't bring you this far to leave you where you are at.
Amen.
Amen.
No matter how many times, no matter how many things occur in your life,
That's right. Amen.
it could be worse.
That's right. That's so true. Amen.
You cannot have a way out.
Lord, I thank you.
You cannot have a way of escape.
Yes. Thank you, Lord.
But because you belong to the Most High,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
the pain that you may be feeling now is going to pass.
Amen.
It didn't say that it wouldn't hurt.
That's right.
Amen.
But what I like to remind people of, that even though you have the pain, it doesn't take away the memory.
Yeah.
No matter how many times we face adversity, how many times we face grief, how many times we face agony, God's promise is still in place.
Amen. Amen.
Remember these three things and you'll find yourself knowing that what you're currently in shall pass.
Amen.
Remember God's promise. Remember God's gift. And remember God's blessing hand.
Yes.
Because those are the things that solidify that what you're going through now won't last always. Last week we talked about being on the potter's wheel.
Yes.
That even though we're on the wheel, being made over, we're still in His hands. Even though Joseph was thrust into Potiphar's house,
Uh-huh.
the potter was still with him. Even though he was in the prison,
Uh-huh.
the potter was still with him.
Yes.
It didn't matter where he went. The one thing that was constant was his God.
Amen.
His surroundings could change. The people around him could change. But his God did.
Amen.
He just had to hold on and believe what God had said. I don't know what it is this morning for you, but what are you believing God for concerning your life? Where do you see yourself in His will? Not where you see yourself, but where do you see Him in His hands? Were you in His hands? Keep believing that what you're facing now is not where you're going to stay.
That's right. That's right.
But God is going to make you a recipient of a comeback
Amen.
where people thought you would never come back from it. And the first person who needs to believe that is you.
Amen.
Because the reality is maybe it's not a whole bunch of people that's believing that you won't bounce back or come back or get back up. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's you. Maybe if you start believing that God is going to do the work that He said in your life. Maybe if you start trusting that even though you are not where you should be or you want to be, that this is not where God is going to lead you. Maybe if you start changing your mindset about yourself, then you can start believing what God has already spoken concerning your life. Half the time it's really us.
Yeah.
How do you feel about yourself and coming out of it? It'll get better. But you gotta believe it's gonna get better. As much as I can believe it for you, you You're the one that really matters
Yeah.
when it comes to believing what God is going to do for you. I can say it, I can shout it from the rooftop, but if you can't believe it for yourself, then it won't make no difference. But you got to believe that what has been said by our God concerning your life shall come to pass.
Amen.
You want to standing on your feet.